Don't Be a Meathead. Mark Thomas here with our nutritional specialist, Cara Zaller. And Cara, you want to talk protein needs today, right, for youth athletes? So give me the general guidelines that you tell your clients.
Sure. So there isn't too much differentiation between males and females, adults and kids. Kids are in a growth phase, so we definitely want to make sure they are hitting their target more than the adults that are fully grown. So it's not as critical. But for athletes in general, it is definitely critical. And for the fact that youth athletes are still growing and so their protein needs are really important for them to meet because they have to cover growth and their sport. So it's approximately 2 grams per pound it's 2 grams per pound of lean body mass is basically what it boils down to.
Okay. And to simplify that, when we were talking earlier, if you don't know your lean body mass, it's basically 1 gram of protein per 1 pound of weight.
So almost like if they hit their body weight in grams of protein, they're doing great. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good target for most people, just because most people aren't even coming close to that. And if you give them a number that's much higher, maybe it is a little bit better if they hit like a little over. Well, they're never going to get that because they're having a hard enough time to reach just what that, the basic recommendation of like just 1 gram per pound of body weight, no less, lean body weight, a little bit off depending, especially with youth athletes, most of them are pretty lean. So I'd rather see them get their total body weight because that covers their growth phase as well as recovery and targets. So,
do you advise them on sources of protein?
Yes.
There's a lot of different ones,
A lot different, right? So that is something really big. Is that the quality of the protein is going to be really important to focus on. So anyone who's like vegan and vegetarian makes a really, really difficult, number one, to hit the target without over consuming total calories. Because if you take, let's say, 4 ounces of chicken breast and you compare that with, a vegan source like lentils, even lentils are high in leucine, which is really what we want to aim for muscle protein synthesis. But calorie to calorie, you're going to have twice as many calories of lentils to get the same amount of leucine in a chicken breast. So when it comes to body composition, then it's really difficult because then they're going to be eating twice as many calories as maybe they should be to get the protein needs that they need. So, and if they're not eating a whole day of leucine, of lentils to get the leucine, a lot of the other vegan vegetarian sources are pretty low in leucine, and then they have to, lose out on the quality of the protein.
So the way I understand it is animal-based proteins have a complete amino acid coverage.
Profile. Yep.
That, they make up, the amino acids make up the proteins, whereas vegan sources of protein are incomplete in terms of the amino acids.
Right. So a lot of things is that if you combine rice and beans, that's why in a lot of cultures you'll see rice and beans put together because rice and beans together make a complete protein. But rice is a pure starch, and I see so many kids who have prediabetes. They can't handle a ton of rice. So when they're, having to combine rice with lentils or rice with beans, they're getting so many blood sugar spiking opportunities just to get their protein needs met. And again, on top of that is that it's twice as many calories than, a simple chicken breast, which is like, barely 150 calories and get everything that you need.
So some other sources of protein, obviously seafood, beef.
Yeah. So here's a simple thing is if you can kill it, it's a protein.
Right.
So any sources of, chicken, fish, turkey, pork, it's an animal, any kind of animal. And of course, then they have like sustainable animals like crickets and, but I don't know any youth are going to go out of their way to eat some crickets, but it's a high protein animal food. But, that's where it shines. So every time I meet with someone, I'll give them a complete list of all protein sources. So like eggs, for example, vegetarians are like, oh yeah, well, we can eat eggs. I said, but eggs is really not really a protein because by weight, it's 50% protein and like 50% fat. Mm-hmm. So again, when it comes to calories or fat, if they're trying to get, let's say 30 to 40 grams of protein with eggs, one egg only has 8 grams of protein. Mm-hmm. So that's a lot of eggs that I don't know of any kids that are going to be eating, oh, let me have 5 eggs for breakfast.
Right, right. So eggs could be a piece of it, but not the complete answer, maybe. How about like Greek yogurt?
Yeah, I think that's fabulous. Yeah, Greek yogurt definitely. I'm not 100% sure of like what the leucine content of off the top of my head of that is in cottage cheese, but they are definitely good quality protein sources. Unfortunately, so many people can't tolerate dairy. So, digestive issues, they're not going to make that as their sole source of protein when they can barely digest it, especially since if that's their protein, we don't want them eating it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner either. But for those that can tolerate it, a good quality Greek yogurt can be fabulous. Yeah.
How about protein powders? They're everywhere.
Yeah, protein powders. So, especially with like the vegan-based protein powders in research recently have been shown to have high levels of heavy metals, especially the pea protein. So, a whey isolate, most people could tolerate. Obviously, vegans aren't going to do that. And I don't think vegetarians eat whey either. Although whey they should because because it's part of dairy. So I guess some would, but whey isolate is definitely the most digestible, easy form of protein for a protein powder. However, I don't want them getting protein strictly from powders because you're missing out on all the other synergistic things that when you're, you want to chew your food and just swallowing a bunch of protein. It's great for like, let's say they have breakfast, lunch, a snack, and a dinner, and that snack has a protein powder base. I'm fine with that, but you're not going to get full on protein powders. So there's something about, eating real food that's going to take longer to sit in your digestive system. So we have to balance trying to hit our protein needs with body composition, right? Especially as athletes, because, someone who's running track and field, gains 20 pounds because they were trying to hit their protein needs is not going to be the best runner.
Yeah. How about protein bars?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of bars, period. Just because to me, a bar is literally someone else chewing up a whole bunch of food, spitting it out and putting it together in now a bar that your body now just gets a bunch of calories for. And it's not really recognized in the body as full. Same kind of concept with like drinking a protein powder. This is a fully processed food and most of it's laden with sugar and other things that we don't want in it. So like I make my own bar, which is actually a muffin, and it's literally it all it has is like a whole oats, eggs, egg whites, a protein powder, and then shredded carrots. Mm-hmm. That's it. Like that's, so it's a bunch of real food. And again, it's still not ideal because if I'd rather, chomp on a carrot versus grinding it up in a muffin. But for me, like when I have to be on the go, if I'm playing my sport really early in the morning, it's something better than nothing. And at least I know all the ingredients. I put them in myself and there's no additives. There's no added sugars, nothing. It's just basically a bunch of whole foods ground up to make a muffin.
Okay. Age-wise, are there really different guidelines for kids versus young adults versus mature adults in terms of protein?
Yeah. It actually is not too far off because like I said, is that the youth adults that are still growing, we want them to be in what's called a nitrogen balance. So we want to have plenty of extra protein on board for them to utilize and grow because we really don't store protein. And protein's essential, fat's essential, carbs are not essential. So really we want to have a high protein meal for or diet for all of these kids that are still growing. On top of that, especially the strength athletes or any of the athletes that are, needing plenty of muscle, which basically is all sports. So that population for sure. Pregnancy, we're growing a baby, that takes extra protein. And then when we get to the adults, they don't digest protein very well. So to get them to metabolize enough protein, we actually have to have them eat more protein because they're not digesting all of it. So, the side of more is better. And then also helping with things like osteoporosis, prevention, because all of that muscle is going to, or all the protein is going to help for the repair and growth of bone as well.
Are there any signs, for young athletes that can indicate they're not getting enough protein in their diet?
Fatigue is a big one. Most of my clients that come that they're not getting enough protein, they're tired. They're literally just tired. And then let's see other things. Mood, because protein, the amino acids are making up their serotonin, dopamine, and all the neurotransmitters. So they might have, let's say, depression, anxiety, things like that. For females, they could have more PMS because again, the proteins, protein's essential. Like you can't, if you were to get your car to drive somewhere and you only filled it up a quarter tank, you don't get very far. That's the same concept with protein is that we don't make protein without, eating it. That's why it's essential. And so nothing in the body doesn't need protein. Like everything in the body needs protein. So just think of just about everything is dependent on protein. So any function that your body wants to do, focus, energy, gain muscle, all of those things require protein. So you're going to, like I said, fatigue is just an easy one. Just because if they're not eating protein, what else are they eating? Carbohydrates mostly. And
Right.
That's going to be blood sugar up. And when blood sugar crashes, they feel fatigued. They can get irritable. They can get anxious because they're not recognizing that it's a low blood sugar state. But if they eat more protein to balance out some of those carbs, they're going to feel way better overall. Yeah.
Excellent. Is there anything I haven't covered that I should ask you?
Let's see. No, I mean, I pretty much just make sure that for the youth, that every meal, every opportunity that they eat should have a quality source of protein. Because if they're trying to get to, their weight in grams of protein, then they can't do that in 2 meals, right? So what happens is a lot of the youth, they run off to school, they skip breakfast, right? Now they're trying, they probably haven't packed much for lunch. I have an athlete that when she came to me, she was eating a Nutri-Grain bar for breakfast and a Nutri-Grain bar for lunch. That's all carbs, no protein. And then when she came home, her family was making, a dinner with like protein and vegetables and some rice. So that was it. They got one opportunity. So really the big message is every time that they eat, there should be a quality source of protein. It could be down to something like, like the yogurt, that's easily transferable. Have them have some hard-boiled eggs, at least it's something, and the protein powders can definitely supplement some of that. But you can't do it just one time a day. It has to be, 3 to 4 times a day that they're getting that protein to reach the optimal amount.
All right. Thank you very, very much. And we can check out your blog posts on don'tbeameathead.com if people want to find out a little bit more. And we will talk with you again. Maybe we can even dive further into protein or even, whatever other nutritional topics, catch our fancy at that time. So thank you very much, Cara.
You're welcome.
All right. See ya.
See ya.